Hey everyone, welcome to Co-Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Boston, and we have a really fun episode today. We have Tim Lowe. He is a licensed professional counselor in private practice, also a stand-up comedian, an author, a poet. He's a bit of a polymath. He focuses on men's issues, which is very interesting to me. Men and their issues, communicating. I love it. It's a great niche. He has just a great outlook on life. I love getting to know Tim and talking to him, and I know you guys are going to love this episode. Welcome, Tim Lowe, to Co-Medicine. It is so great to have you here.
Good to be here.
All right, we're going to get into everything on Co-Medicine. I always like to start with people's day job, and hopefully that's your job as a therapist that you refer to as your day job. I think that's true.
Yeah.
So tell us about your day job and what you do and when you qualified, sort of whatever you want to tell us about your day job.
Sure. So I actually have two jobs. I've always done agency work, working for someone else, part of like a group practice. And I've been doing that for as long as I've had my license. I graduated from Monmouth University with a master's in psychological counseling in May of 2016. And since then, later on that year, I got my first job, and I've been in the field since about 8 years there. And I also have a private practice where I specialize, or I really hone my demographic into working with working professional men to better communicate and express themselves to the women that they love. Because Lord knows, do we need that out there? It's hard enough getting men into therapy, let alone doing the work that it takes. So as a therapist, private practice and agency work. I'm looking to eventually, seesaw away from the agency work and do the private practice full time. But that's going to be a slow and steady, probably over the course of the next year.
Okay. We need men to know that you're there. Okay. I really want to,
Yeah.
I'm kind of fascinated by the specificity and also like what, I know you do other things besides working with men and relationships, but I would love to just drill into that a little bit.
Sure.
Because I'm a little bit fascinated by it. It says you like to help men in committed relationships. This is on your website.
Sure, go for it.
You want to help men in committed relationships effectively communicate with the women they love and learn active listening skills. And then, so anyway, let's just start with that because I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. What I've observed is that, well, first, grad school does a great job. I'm really proud of the education that I got and the training through Monmouth, that they prepared the hell out of me for clinical and therapeutic work. Most programs don't train therapists to be good business people. That's just because we're in the feeling department. It's all about, how can I help? And business is just cut and dry. It's just cold, and that's not our expertise. So a lot of people, especially when they go into private practice, I help people with depression and anxiety. And it's this umbrella blanket. Who doesn't have anxiety and depression? So I started to pay attention to who do I really connect with well? And a lot of the conversations that I had with men 35 to 55 that have been in committed relationships, I noticed that, I just had that same argument with my wife yesterday. And in my head, I'm like, okay, how are we gonna, let's try to, I tried saying that too. And that didn't work. So I noticed that I can really have some great connections with those guys based off of the relationship that I have with my wife. And it's a two-way street. The active listening skills, the being present, that there are so many times where I feel like I'm barely doing work with some of these emotionally unintelligent or emotionally unaware men, where I'm just barely saying, hey, like, it sounds like your wife wants to spend more time with you. And they're like, yeah, I got to do that. And I'm like, dude, we are barely scratching the surface here. Be in the house. It's not all about financial provisions. So if men can learn more about what it is to feel, and not in the stereotypical, how does that make you feel? That's how most people think about, or at least men tend to think about therapy. It's more in the, how do I feel about this thing? Not in terms of some saccharine or overly emotional tree hugging kind of sense. It's more in a, do I actually care about this? Am I engaging in behaviors that are true to my nature and how I operate? Am I living by my standard and the things that I value? Or is this just societal expectations? Is this just what my family has said how I'm supposed to behave? And boy, if we don't check in with ourselves and really know how it is that we feel about stuff, we can be off to the races for so many things, thinking that we're doing the quote unquote right thing because this is what everyone's been telling me I should be doing, as opposed to how do you actually interpret this? Is this something you actually care about? Men can be so disconnected from themselves that honest and transparent communication often doesn't happen because they're lost in the, again, societal expectations, religious roles, family standard, whatever it is. And there's no room for them to say, this is what's important to me.
Okay, I love that. So I'm just curious. I mean, this is very blanket statement. It's not going to apply to everybody, but how much of this do you think is gender roles, in society kind of pushing men to act a certain way, and this is how men act, and they're not supposed to be emotional? And how much of this is just biology? Men and women are different. Again, I'm saying this in a very blanket way. What do you think? Like in your work, is it like, why do men act differently than women in a kind of gender normative relationship, I guess? Like what are you finding? Why do they act differently? Yeah.
Yeah. Great question. I would say that it starts with a biological difference. Men and women are just happen to be different in how we view things and different hormones. And then society really enhances that difference. So we start off more or less the same, slight differences. But then when you get messages of, boys don't cry and women are supposed to be in the kitchen, that just creates such a divide between us.
Okay. And do you think that's changing now or not? Like sometimes I think, oh, it's changing. Things are getting better. And then I see things that really make me depressed and go, oh, it's not changing. Like, do you?
Sure.
Yeah.
There's an ebb and flow right now. I don't know if it's full steam ahead in either direction of, okay, we are definitely making some headway here and we're in a good direction, or that tends to happen when there's a big cultural or societal shift. We'll go from one side of the pendulum to the other, and it takes some time for it to mellow out and just get into a happy medium. I think we're in the vacillating between the two. There's certainly an awful lot of challenging going on right now, but there's also people who are clinging to traditional habits and old beliefs. That's usually going to get the loudest response. That's where we see that most profoundly.
Yeah, I would say on both sides, the people that are yelling the loudest, and maybe there's something in the middle that is where we should all be. Okay, I got this from your website too. You said there's a common quote from men, and maybe this is what you said about you're hearing this. Whenever I tell my wife I'm upset about something, she'll start to cry. I end up apologizing even though I haven't done anything wrong. So I don't know if you can, that sounds like a fairly common thread that you're working through with some of your patients.
Yeah, that line has come up so frequently, and maybe not those specific words, but that general message of my wife or my girlfriend tells me that I need to be more emotionally available. I need to access my emotions more and be more vulnerable. So here I am, doing what's being asked, and I'm expressing disappointment. I'm expressing, I was a bit let down by this interaction. And to women's credit, it could be kind of jarring to hear even seemingly innocuous feedback that puts them on the, oh no, I've screwed up kind of plate. When men attempt to do that thing that they're being asked to do, and then it gets met with some sort of jarring, like, ooh, I'm not used to this. This is not how it's supposed to go. It can be such a challenge to, all right, I know this isn't working out the way that we were hoping. Your spouse, your partner is allowed to have that reaction. Let's not recoil and think, see, this is why I don't bother doing this, because now I've created more of a problem. Now we're just, again, making ourselves smaller and smaller. Being able to withstand the fact that we've upset our partner, we've done the wrong thing. Now I've added more stress onto her life, reframing that away from, oh, no. She's allowed to have her reaction. That's okay. I don't have to internalize this message of I've done anything wrong. Sure, she can cry. I don't have to say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do it, because now I'm dismissing the annoyance or the disappointment that I originally was trying to express.
Yeah, no, that kind of spoke to me. I have a great marriage, but yeah, definitely. My husband will like that sometimes is his default. He'll be like, okay, sorry. Possibly not even knowing why he's saying sorry, but just like, yeah, we need this to end, so I'm just going to apologize. So yeah, it sounds like it's fairly classic the way that, again, heteronormative couples will interact with each other. And it made me laugh a bit too, because I was thinking about taking it out of my relationship. Like, I'm the people who know me will laugh at this. I'm the one in the relationship who's usually the one, I always say I'm the bitch one, but I'm the one who has to like complain about this or do, whatever it is. Like, I feel like I'm the one who always has to do that. And my husband is like the nice guy who never does that. And I kind of tired of that role. And so, sometimes I'll say, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to always be the one who has to go, because, kind of have to do it sometimes. Things don't always work out. You have to call the company, you have to do this. But like when he started doing that, like he came in so hot and I was
Yeah.
whoa, what are you doing? Like, you can't talk to people like that. He's like, well, I'm just telling them. And I'm like, not like that, and it was like, anyway, it made me laugh because I was like, oh, he never does that. He has no practice in complaining. Sure. And so, then I was like, okay, I'll keep being the bitch one for a while until you learn how to do that. Yeah, but it's a skill, right? Like Yep. And then we get called Karen, which is a whole other thing. But yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, well, I love that you're doing that. Are you working with men on their own or men or couples or both?
With the agency that I work for, that's pretty much whoever I'm not as able to curate the clientele that I have for the most part. Whoever calls in and they need, I can do couples there, some family sessions. It's mostly individuals. In my private practice, that's solely just individual men.
Okay. Well, I love it. I think you're doing a great service. So it's women probably love what you're doing. I'm just saying, because it is sometimes like the way we're not. And I hate, I was thinking about that. Actually, I want to know what you think about it. I think it's dumb though, and it's a long time since I even read any of it. But like the whole men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Is there anything to that, or is it all? What do you think of that?
I've heard that phrase. I don't think I've ever dove into. I've always just associated that with men and women are different. Yeah. I'm not all that informed on astrological signs and whatnot and like planetary status. So if being from Venus means you have these typically female traits, then so be it. And if being from Mars means you have these typically male traits, then so be that. Again, for the most part, we are a little bit, there's that difference. But as soon as you plug in societal messages and expectations that aren't ours, that divide is just going to get so much larger.
Okay. All right. Well, I love it. It's really, really interesting. And I think it's great that you've chosen to focus on one thing. Veterinarians notoriously terrible at business also.
I think most people in the medical feeling, the helpers, we're not making millions of dollars because this is such a lucrative business. I mean, unless you're like a plastic surgeon, but that's more of a business than anything helping society wise. I'm not denigrating, plastic surgeons or anything, but we're in the helping profession. There's not a hell of a lot of profit in that.
No, now there's corporatized veterinary medicine, which is a whole other thing. But most vets didn't go into it for a business. And I'm sure you didn't become a therapist because you were like, wow, I'm going to make so much money being a therapist. Sure. Okay, well, I'm kind of interested because it sounds like you started doing stand-up around the same time as you were at least finishing your training. Like you've been doing stand-up for 10 years. So just to go through some of the things you've done, and then we'll get into it. You've self-produced a special in 2017 called Free Advice. You're an improviser, you're a poet, you're an author. And so tell us about kind of your journey with stand-up and how you got into doing stand-up comedy.
Sure. I've loved stand-up since I was a little kid, being 10, 11 years old, watching Comedy Central Presents, that half-hour specials on Comedy Central, and I had always wanted to do it. And I have my undergraduate is in English. I have a creative writing degree. So I was always around poetry and literature, and that was definitely a first love. But I'd always been like a class clown, goofy kid, especially in middle school, just being, very quirky. And I loved the humor of life. And I come from a fairly large family, and cousins and my father are some great jokesters. So I've just been around that kind of environment. I start grad school in September of 2013, and I didn't have a job, and I'm living down the shore, and my wife has a friend who gave us a hard drive that was filled with music and comedy specials and movies. And I had so much time, like I can only do so much homework. Let me catch up on all these specials that I've always wanted to watch. And I spent 2 months of doing a couple classes for grad school, and then at night I would just watch all this entertainment. And I was like, I need to do this. There's no reason why I can't, because I've been thinking about it for so long. So technically, my first open mic was December of 2013. I didn't start doing it in earnest until like 2016-ish. And then, 2 years with the pandemic, not a whole lot was going on. On paper, 10 years, but like stage time wise, maybe a little over half that. Humor has been a part of my life for a while. Once I started, I was like, okay, well, now there's no not doing this.
Yeah. And how do you think being a therapist, I mean, you were kind of developing both at the same time, but does it help you being a therapist? Because I mean, a lot of stand-up is understanding people and like human interactions and what's funny about them. Like, do you find that, I mean, you probably have a better understanding of how people interact than most people. Does that help you?
Sure.
Does that help you with your comedy?
I have a friend who I did improv with, and he keeps saying that I have such an unfair advantage being a therapist for comedy because of what you just said. I agree. Whatever. I have an advantage, but it does help me give an insight or get an insight into how people, what makes them tick, all the things that we have so much more in common than we do have differences. You know, that gap is not that big that I've been talking about. It helps me better understand in the therapeutic setting, when people come to me that have experiences that I could never imagine having. We come from, two very, very different lives, but there's usually a common thread. There's like, oh yeah, I think that too, but we are from very different socioeconomic backgrounds, different races, different gender, whatever it may be. But the relatability is what really helps, because that's as a performer, that's what you're doing. If I'm going over material that 19th century Russian history, that's a very specific, no one's relating to that on stage. But when I hear women complain about how men can't find anything, and we have these man eyes that I say, it's right there. Ooh, I've heard this a lot. And my wife yells at me when I can't find, let's write that down.
That's cool. Yeah. No, I think you do have a little bit of an unfair advantage, and improv too, I think, because I don't know, I feel like your background help you to find the game quicker. What's the obstacle? What's this person's problem? All those things you're trying to do on an improv stage really quickly. I feel like you're like, I think that's amazing.
And at the core of a lot of improv is what I've learned is like the importance of the relationship. Like you'll find the funny, if you go straight towards the funny, now you're forcing it. But if it's we're brothers, or this is my father, or this is whoever it is, that relationships are so important in a therapeutic context, because we're connected. We're trying to achieve something here. So if I have a really good understanding of, hey, we're in this together, I've got your back in this, in the improv relationship, then that foundation is so much stronger, as opposed to, what are we doing here? Because it can get panicky if you don't have that foundation.
Yeah, I agree. And then in that effort of like trying to be funny, it isn't, right? Like it's weird how that is. Like I remember when I went to comedy school, and so at first, like I used to make fun of that, be like, don't stop trying to be funny. That advice. And I'm like, well, why aren't we trying? Isn't that what we're doing? But it's true in improv. Like you should be like looking at the relationship. What's the obstacles? What are we trying to do? What's the game? And then the audience will find that funny. So are you doing more improv or stand up, or are you still doing both?
I haven't done improv in a little while. It's all stand up at the moment.
Okay. And are you doing stand up in clubs, or or are you doing it at conferences, or where are you kind of most commonly performing?
Clubs.
Okay.
The alternative scene is pretty large. So there's the traditional clubs, and then there's the Elks Lodges with a bunch of Italian Americans that are like 70 years old. We're saying, oh, well, this isn't my ideal environment, but here we go. But yeah, mostly clubs and like impromptu spaces that get created for a show.
Okay, cool. I just did a show in Moose Creek, Ontario. Didn't go well, Tim.
Hey, those nights happen.
I'm still processing whatever that was.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your joke writing process?
Sure. I'm a big observer, and I like approaching things with a curious mind. When I see something that makes me go like, that's interesting. Why is that the case? And usually, I would say probably my material is like thought-provoking. It can certainly be provocative at times, or there's a very heavy poetic paying attention to language. If I have a couple bits, I guess you can call them poems, where one that I do every once in a while, because it takes a lot out of me to do it. It's called The Human Body, and I create a story just using a whole bunch of body part idioms. There's egg on my face, and of course I can't think of any body idioms right now. But I string a whole bunch of them together and create a little story, and it's 2.5 minutes long. So something like that takes from my creative writing degree and my love of language. And the more thought-provoking stuff is more seeing something and questioning why that is. Anything that makes me go, like I said, that's interesting.
Yeah. And do you find, like, I know you would never talk about specifics of a patient or any of those interactions because they're confidential, but do people know you're a therapist when you are doing comedy, or is it two separate worlds for you?
I don't advertise it to clients, but the clients who want to know, especially if they're seeing me for the first time and they want to do their research, they'll look me up, they'll find my website, and then they'll see TikToks, videos, or YouTube things, and they'll come back the next day. You do stand up. If they find me, then I can discuss that. And yes, don't follow me. I'm keeping this a professional relationship. So I don't advertise it. But yeah, when things come up that, again, that curious mind, like, oh, that's interesting. I've heard this from so many people.
Right.
This must be relatable material. Incorporating that into my life sometimes feels a little disingenuous, because I don't want to talk about a lived experience that sure is relatable, but if it's not mine to own, then it feels like if I'm writing for someone else, or if I'm putting it in a story or something like that, sure, all bets are off, because now I'm creating a much larger story. But in terms of, I was going through this, I'm not going to try to force or manufacture a general relatable story into something that I've experienced, because that's not my voice.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that. That makes a lot of sense to me, actually. And how do your clients react when they either they know before they meet you, or after they've come back for another session and they've realized that they found you on the internet, that you do comedy?
They're so excited. Yeah. They couldn't be happier. Oh, that's so cool. I couldn't do that. Oh my God. And the typical, you must have plenty of material from, talking to all these people. Sure, in the relatability sense, but not in the, oh man, I can't wait to talk about someone's trauma on stage, because trauma's hilarious. Let's talk about abuse. Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Okay, yeah, no, that definitely, that makes sense. I have had the same experience. At first, I was kind of worried about my clients finding out that I did comedy, but now they know, they come right in and they're just like, they're excited. They're like, oh, you do stand up, and so I don't know what I was so worried about, because I think they like seeing another dimension to you as a person, as opposed to you're just a veterinarian, you're just a therapist. So yeah, I mean, I guess the people who don't like that, they don't come to me. That's okay. They probably shouldn't if they don't. That's if that's not for them, that's totally fine. Yeah. I call most of my guests nerds, and it's as a high compliment. I suspect you might be a little bit, because you wrote a book. And you wrote a book about stand up. It's called
All the Things I Know.
Things I Know. So it's all the things you know about stand up comedy. Is that right?
Even more. Basically, it's a self-published book. I went through Amazon to do it, and this was at the height of the pandemic. Okay. And I'm very structured when it comes to, or very organized when it comes to how I file my material. I do a lot of longhand writing, and I also, once I have the bit down, I'll put it onto a Word document that I save to a jump drive. In that jump drive, I have a folder of material. And I have, I don't know, probably like 30 or 40 different topics. And all right, this is the race stuff. This is the men and women stuff. And within each document is all my material. So I have all these files worth of jokes. And I was going through them all. And I was like, I could probably, because it's already typed out, it's all right here. I can format it in a way that is more book, I guess, convenient, and have a couple chapters that are of similar material. Let's, string all these together. And so the different chapters, it's all the things I know in terms of what I've experienced, what my experiences are as a person on the planet. A couple of those poems that I mentioned with the, creative wordplay are in there. It was an exercise to say, similar to how I decided, I think I need to do stand-up. There's no not doing it now. Oftentimes when I get an idea in my head, this is be for better or worse, I can be dead set on, well, now this has to get done. I got to do it. I saw all the material. I said, there's a wealth of knowledge here, or there's a wealth of stuff that I can explore here. Let's see if I can format it, create a little book, get someone to do a couple headshots for me, and then self-publish. Okay,
so I misunderstood. So all the things it's not really a how to do comedy. It's more, this is my comedy, this is my voice, these are my jokes.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure that people know how to find it if they want to check that out. Were you worried about burning material? People talk about it's changing now, but not putting stuff on the internet or not putting your jokes out there because you're going to burn your material. Do you any worry about that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, a younger version of myself would have thought more about that. Oh no, now everyone's going to know all the stuff that I've talked about. Maybe 30 years ago, pre-internet, when especially when Johnny Carson was like the main thing for comedy, you're going to, such a small window. Now there is such a level of entertainment. There is such a plethora of stuff out there. I could probably redo the same YouTube clips, like the same post 1 week after another for like a solid 6 months, and it's still going to be reaching new and different people. So I'm humble enough to know no one's looking at me. At my level, I'm not burning any material. I will feel free. If more people get eyes on it, I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good attitude. No, it's definitely, I think even the last 5 years it's changed, and now everyone's like, you got to get your clips out, which have I done that? No, I haven't. But everyone's like, you got to get them out there. So yeah, I'll put that on my to-do list also. So when you're writing jokes, you said I do the same thing. I like to have things filed. I'm trying to get the best system for filing my jokes. When you're actually writing stuff, you pick up something, you're like, that's interesting. Are you then writing? Are you getting on stage and just kind of working it out on stage? Or what's your process for like getting the jokes from your ideas to that Word document or that set on stage?
Sure. I get inspired. I start writing it. I know myself well to know that I'm not a writing on stage kind of guy. Some people have the gift of gab and they can just go on tears. That's not me. I'll do a little bit of writing, stream of consciousness. Let's just see where this idea takes it. I'll go perform that. I'll pay attention to where the highlights are. If there are any highlights, go back and enhance those highlights. This is where they seem to respond. Let's see if I can mine that a little bit. What's the funny in that? I'll take that back onto stage and I'll keep refining it until I get to like a concentrated version. And oftentimes what I originally started with is very different from what I ended up with. So learning how to edit is really important because the concept that originally inspired me, this is so good. This is gonna be so much funny. But the real thing is over here, and maybe not as tantalizing. It's not as popping, but you have a lot more to work with. There's a lot more, much more interesting, and probably a lot more funny, as opposed to, oh, that's nice. Like I get it, but there's nothing beyond that.
Yeah, it is funny how sometimes there's things that people laugh at, and I'm like, why are they laughing at that and not this? Like this thing that I find funny. And I know I'm a little bit guilty of this. I've got a couple jokes that I'm just too attached to and I won't take them out. People don't laugh and I'm just...
We all are.
I'm like, is that just for me? I guess it's just for me. But I'm like, but that's really funny. So, but obviously I've got to either kill it or figure out why are they not laughing? And are you ever doing comedy like for your profession, or do you think your profession can benefit from comedy? I know like during the pandemic, pretty much this is the one universal thing about co-medicine. Like we all went through a pretty rough time, all the healthcare professionals, all the helping professionals, everyone who was doing anything to do with healthcare during the pandemic. There's a lot of burnout in my profession, I think in your profession as well. Is there any way, do you think that you can bring comedy to that, or do you sort of keep that separate as well?
If there are like fundraisers raising awareness for like suicidal, awareness month or something like that, I can see therapy heavy shows being really beneficial and organizing it in that way. In the kind of work that I do, like I'm never trying out bits on my clients or anything like that. But what I've observed is that I've done so much more laughing alongside my clients than there's ever been crying. And there's obviously been a hell of a lot of crying, people processing things, but the being able to have an intact sense of humor, I think is such an important skill to have when it comes to resilience, when it comes to not taking ourselves as serious. And I'm guilty of that a lot. I can get very much in my head and the orderliness of things and, but what's the morally right thing to do? And it can really cut yourself off the legs just to have fun, just to not take things as deliberate and our furrows or our brows are always furrowed. If I'm able to let people know that this is a safe enough place to go to those scary mental places, knowing that there's a foundation of humor, that it's safe enough to go in the dangerous places because it's also safe enough to let your guard down and be exposed. Evolutionarily speaking, when we laugh, it's a sign that we're safe. It's a sign that everything is okay. And even if you have like a good guffaw, like a good, back, you're exposing your neck. And that like hearty laugh of, oh my God, this is so funny. We're vulnerable because I know I can let my guard down. Everything is okay. If my head is down and the arms crossed and we're not open, the environment may be nice. It may be technically safe, but if I'm not safe in my head, then what does it matter?
Yeah, I love that. When your patients, I don't know if you call them patients or clients, but say patients?
They're interchangeable.
Okay. When they're in that place of laughter, I don't know if you can even answer that. Like, where is that coming from? Is that because you're guiding them and saying, hey, it's okay? Or are they just recognizing something in themselves and realizing like, oh, that's funny, or I feel vulnerable, so I'm going to laugh? Or where do you think that comes from? I think that's really interesting.
I think it comes from an acknowledging of the trials and tribulations and the unfairness of, hey, I'm in a really messed up situation here. I didn't ask for it. It's not my fault. And honoring that is incredibly important, because this is reality. This is sure. And then if you take the absurd, like, this is so stupid. I can't, dealing with exes is probably where this comes up quite a bit. I'm stuck with this guy. He's the father of my children. And obviously I'm not laughing at them in that time. There's that space where it's, all right, let's vent this out. Let's honor the fact that it's unfair. You didn't ask for it. There's a massive injustice happening here. We could hand wring for our entire lives. This is BS. I shouldn't have to. Justify it. Completely reasonable. At what point do we say, all right, I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to directly just laugh at it, but being able to find okay, yeah, what an absurd human being that they live in that reality. What are they doing? How do they function? That is the absurdity in life, is the ridiculousness. It's not so much just laughing at your pain. There's an element of that, but recognizing that I think a great example of this is Tig Notaro with her cancer. Like that, her book is tremendous, where she talks about, it was 3 things right in a row. She got, I think, C. diff, and then her mother or father, someone passes away.
Her mom. Yeah.
Her mom passed away, and then she gets cancer.
Yeah.
And that's so funny. That is that order of things, to think that, oh, there's no way something else is going to happen. It's not comical in the ha-ha sense, but are you kidding me? I got to deal with this now. Like, we can lose ourselves in that kind of ridiculousness.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think it's only 5 or 6 minutes that when she originally did that very raw set about, and they call it's either live or live, and no one ever says how you're supposed to say it, but it is incredible. It's an amazing piece of comedy, which, it's about that, and definitely teaches us something about sometimes you do just have to laugh, because life is ridiculous and difficult, and what else are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
You're going to cry.
I would say, I would say that laughing at pain is similar to how when you cry over something that's so beautiful, your brain just can't comprehend, like a new baby. I can't, in my wildest imaginations, fathom something, the Grand Canyon, something that is just massive and beautiful beyond comprehension. There's an absurdity beyond comprehension when we're in such depths of despair that you just can't help but laughing. I think there's that scene in Breaking Bad when Skyler takes the money and Walter White is underneath the house, and there's not as much money as he thought there was, and he just has this maniacal laugh because his life is pretty much over at that point. So that, like, beyond comprehension mentality.
Yeah, I like that analogy of, like, sometimes you cry because something's beautiful, and sometimes you laugh because something's really awful.
So awful. Yeah.
All right. Well, I love that. Okay. So this is, you seem to be balancing both. You're balancing the comedy and working. Are you working full time as a therapist?
Working full time with the agency, part time with the private practice. And yeah, it definitely sounds like I'm balancing. I don't know how I'm doing it.
Okay.
Because I'm really fortunate in my agency schedule: late night, early morning, late night, early morning, late night. The hours that I'm not at that agency, I'm reserving for private practice hours.
Okay.
So I'm just constantly trading off. If I don't have too late of a night, I am rushing to an open mic or a show, and it can definitely be a lot. But I think because with what I was saying before about men not knowing how they actually feel about things, if I was misguided in that, I'm supposed to be a comedian because it's something that I liked when I was a kid, and I'm just mindlessly pursuing this dream, then I could be running myself ragged. As opposed to, no, like, I've done some soul searching, the freedom of being a comedian, if I can make that my main gig at some point in the future, that to me is so motivating that, yeah, I can survive the late nights. I can survive the going from one place to the other and not having a whole lot of time to myself, squeezing in writing. I'm also working on a limited series television, a screenplay. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing, but because they're all passion projects, because they're all followed through with intention, it's not a chore. Although it can feel difficult and, like I said, sleepless nights sometimes, but because it's what I actually want, it makes it so much more rewarding.
Okay. No, I love it. It is hard to fit it all in, I think. It sounds like you're working more than full time then. And then you're also doing stand-up and writing. So
yeah. It's a lot in my world right now.
All right. Well, you kind of answered this, but I ask all my guests this. If you could give up your career as a therapist and do stand-up or comedy writing, whatever that means to you, do comedy full time, and you make the same amount of money or more money, so it wouldn't affect your family or your lifestyle or anything like that, would you give up being a therapist, or would you try to continue to do both?
Sarah, in a heartbeat. I would leave so fast. Not that I don't find the work gratifying. It is incredibly gratifying. I like watching people grow.
Yeah.
Helping people on their healing journey is an incredibly rewarding experience, and I feel connected with a lot of people. What I've learned is that I got into therapy, being a therapist, because I already have this like open portal kind of personality that I think you have to have that kind of temperament first, and then, oh, sure, I've got a career. Awesome. It's hard, talk about separating. It's hard separating person Tim from therapist Tim. It's all, I have to help. I have to, jump in and solve someone's problem or give them that space that they so much deserve. What's rattling in my brain is this idea of, once I'm able to, fingers crossed, go from being a therapist to comedy, is I've spent long enough listening to people. Now it's my turn for people to listen to me.
Yeah, well, and you have things to say. So that's,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's amazing. Do you find, actually, I want to ask you this too, like in your personal life, because of what you do you find your friends and family or even acquaintances, like, are they like, hey, I need to talk to you, I've got a problem? Like, are people coming to you, not in the office, but for your help because you're that type of person? Is that happening in your personal life?
I've been fortunate in that, obviously, yes, that does come up. I'm really glad that it's not rampant. And I think it's because, and I'm not usually tremendous with boundaries, but I am good with boundaries in this respect. Being able to meet someone where they're at in the therapeutic environment is because I know them. I've been getting to hear the themes and the patterns of their behaviors. I can curate a treatment plan based off of what their needs are. Now, granted, I may know a friend really well at the same time, but it's a different level. Like I've got my friends back,
yeah,
and I want what's best for them. Not that I don't care. I tell this to my clients a lot. I say that I don't have a stake in your outcome. I don't care what you do. Obviously, I care on a human level, and I want what's best for you. But I'm not invested. Leave your job, sure. If that's what you want, we'll genuinely pursue what you actually value. I'm not just throwing, try it out or whatever. It's definitely not that. But when my friends come to me, is there some dream analysis? Hey, this happened. What do you think? Okay, sure, I'll entertain that. But I think because most of people that are close to me know that I'm not able to provide a therapeutic curating treatment the same to them, the same way that I'm not able to be a friend to a client. I can't have those two differences is, I think, what helps people say, I've got one or two family members that are a bit liberal with how much they contact me. So it happens, but being able to shut it down and to give very generic, I'm not getting into the nitty gritty of your life. I don't know you. I don't have that kind of connection with you. That usually dissuades them from further contact, because if I give them great advice, Tim's got the answers. Yeah. I'm just reaffirming that. If I give them some platitude that I can just Google, all right, they're not going to, all right, well, Tim's not a good therapist. I'm not going to turn to him anymore.
Yeah, no, I was just interested in the boundaries because, I mean, we get it a lot as veterinarians, and it's weird. It's usually people that are a little bit more removed from me. Like my closer friends, they'll go to a vet and they'll tell me after. I'm like, hey, you could have called me. But the people that are just like a little bit outside my circle, like I haven't talked to them for 3 years, they're like, hey, what do you think of this? And I'm like, I think you should go to a vet. Like, I don't know. I can't Facebook it out with you. Or they want to know if their vet is a crook, or like if their vet gave them bad advice. I'm just like, I couldn't even couldn't even begin to really know that without looking at the animal and looking at the records and doing it. And I don't really want to do that, and most vets I think are doing a good job. So I'm not here. I'm not the vet police. I'm not here to and the bottom line is it's expensive. And what they want me to say is it's expensive. And I'm like, it is.
Yeah. So is therapy. So yeah. If you have a mechanic friend that working on car, all this, it's all pay for services.
Things cost money. That's the problem.
They do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put, if it's okay with you, I'll put your Instagram. If we can put links to your book if you want. I don't know if there's anything else you want to promote or how people find you if they, I guess either way, to come and see you, because it sounds like there's some men out there might want to talk to you. Yeah.
So professionally, with my private practice, I operate out of this office, which is located in downtown Summit, New Jersey. All right. Can I plug the insurances that I take on? Sure. Yeah. So currently in network with Cigna and Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. By the end of the year, I'm hoping to be in network with Aetna. When it comes to entertainment wise, you said that you'll include the handles for my private practice. That Instagram is Timothy Lowe LLC. Okay. My personal comedian handle is the Tim Lowe. Okay. And depending on when this comes out, I'm actually going to be headlining a showcase at the Dojo of Comedy next Tuesday. Okay. Is this coming out?
We're not that fast, Tim. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Friday, November 8th, I'll be in Asbury Park as part of the Ugly Pancake Comedy Festival. And the week after that, Saturday, November 16th, I'll be at the Stoned Dojo in Toms River. That's a weed show. So if people like smoking reefer, go to the Stone Dojo on Saturday, November 16th for a show.
Do you find that's weird when the audience is stoned?
Weird sometimes. I mean, if they're really baked and they're not paying attention, well, you don't have much of an audience. I choose stoned people over arrogant, drunk assholes any day of the week. It is weird though, because everyone's collectively high and, their eyes are red. And I don't know what's being comprehended right now. Am I a lizard? What are they seeing right now?
Yeah, I just find they laugh, but not always when I think they should. But they're still laughing, so I'm like, okay. I mean, if you find that funny, I mean, I don't care. Sometimes I've seen comedians who get upset when people laugh at their setup. They're like, this isn't the joke yet. And I'm like, who cares? Laugh when you want to laugh. I don't care. Yeah, that's the whole thing that we're doing, is trying to have our audience laugh. So I guess, I was just curious. I haven't done a lot of those shows. I did one almost by accident, possibly hotbox myself and the dog. Anyway, long story.
There's always that risk. Yeah.
Okay, we're now at the last question. It's been so great to talk to you. So this is the last question we ask every guest on Co-Medicine. This question, I don't know if you know this, if you're ready for it, but our ultimate guest is Dr. Ken Jeong. We would love to have him on the Co-Medicine podcast. If you could speak, now you're not talking to me, you're not talking to the audience, you're talking directly to Ken. Could you please invite him to come and be a guest on Co-Medicine?
Sarah, how long has this podcast been going on?
It's about a year.
Dr. Ken, it has been far too long to have the most perfect guest not show up for the most perfect podcast, Co-Medicine with Dr. Sarah Boston. I can't think of a better environment, a better host to interview a better guest. We need to make this happen because the world needs to hear and see this conversation.
Love it. That was great. That was perfect. That was a perfect invitation. Okay. Well, Tim, I've enjoyed talking to you. I'm so grateful that you came on this podcast. Thank you for your time, because I know your time's valuable because you're super busy. I didn't even know how busy you were. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you. It's been great to meet you.
Wonderful conversation. Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up another episode of Co-Medicine. Thank you so much for listening. It is great having you here. If you have been listening to Co-Medicine from the beginning, thank you. If you're new to Co-Medicine, thank you and welcome to our Co-Medicine community. It is wonderful to have you here. I want to just give a shout out to Mark Edwards, who wrote the music for Co-Medicine. He's a comedian, an actor, a musician. He's going to be famous, you guys. And then you'll be like, is that the same Mark Edwards? And I'll be like, yeah. He's my friend, you guys. I know him. And he wrote the song. He's amazing. Also, big shout out to Dustin Bays. Thank you for editing the show and producing it. I appreciate you, because I don't know how to do that stuff and I don't want to learn. Yes, it's willful ignorance, I think, at this point, but I'm so glad Dustin is here with me, helping me out with the show. And thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it, share it, do all the things, review it. If you're a sponsor or a potential sponsor, call me. That would be great. If you don't like the show, I don't know why you're still here.